as settlers traveled westward in the 1800s. Some, who were more adventurous, came across the Arkansas River and crossed the Indian Territory into modern-day Oklahoma. Attracted by the lush, rich land surrounding the river, lined with pecan trees and filled with wild game, these weary settlers found an end to their search for a place to raise their families in a community called Posey on Posey Creek, which later would become the town of Bixby in 1902. This would be their place of rest, a true Oklahoma town filled with farmers, teachers, preachers, and even some outlaws. By 1904, the railroad finally crossed Oklahoma with routes through Bixby. It brought sweeping changes to this sleepy little town. Bixby became a place of commerce and community, an oasis on the plains. As farming edged closer to the river, it seemed that such a fertile area was a perfect place to settle. But in spite of all that, there were a few daring young settlers who decided to venture across the river on rope-tied barges, seeking more opportunity on the northern side of the Arkansas. It was not an easy feat by any stretch, but sheer willpower, stamina, humor, pride, and optimism enabled many to make the trek northward. They would travel back and forth, picking up more settlers and carrying them across the river until they had all reached the other side. A tranquil, fertile, and abundant place is where they'd land, and the settlers soon came to view their journey as a bridge to a new and peaceful life. In honor of this place of serenity, they called the new settlement the Village of Scereno. The first building in the village was a quaint little stone chapel that seated only 8 people. Soon after, the settlers would join together to build a community barn. The barn, as it was simply called, allowed farmers to trade locally. This new place of commerce would serve the needs of the growing village and become a place for social activities. As the original chapel became too small for gatherings, a larger chapel was built following the end of World War I, and by 1919, the villagers had built a permanent home for their new pastor. They would eventually build a schoolhouse for their children, surrounded by homes of the families who worked outside the village. Over the years, many of the structures that were first built ultimately were converted into other uses. For example, the first small chapel is now a place where people come to pray. The first general store is now the coffee shop, with college youth gatherings on the upper level. The bank building, now an insurance office. The pond that was originally the watering hole for people bringing their cattle and horses in is now the place where public baptisms are held. The livery stable with a blacksmith shop next to it is now a Mexican-style cafe. The schoolhouse is now a housing complex, and the banks of the pond now serve as an amphitheater for concerts and other events throughout the year. The traditions established in Scereno are a cornerstone of the village culture. It wasn't uncommon for the small village to shut down the streets for a festival called the Christmas Parade of Lights. The main street would be filled with decorations and lights the 3 weeks before Christmas. The only way to travel on the street was by foot or by carriage. The villagers adorned their homes and shops with trees and festive decorations. The Christmas pageant, an annual theatrical depicting the life of Christ, was anchored at the second larger chapel. As the event outgrew this venue, it was moved to the barn to house all the people who were attending from far away. As the pageant grew even more popular, a theater was erected by the community as a place to house the pageant and other events throughout the year. Following the end of World War I, in celebration of the return of our boys fighting overseas, the village began an annual festival that included the people joining together in the village square to share in a time of faith and family. This freedom celebration became a summer tradition, and to this day, villagers still honor the sacrifice and service of patriots and their families, rooted by their faith and trust in God that helped shape our nation. Another one of Scereno's cherished traditions is common among young couples who come to the original little chapel on the pond. The one-room chapel is lit by an eternal flame. For decades, young men have been proposing marriage in this way to young ladies they love. Many couples return to the little chapel on their anniversaries to recommit their vows to the Lord. Over the years, this small, quaint village has been known for many things to many people. But most of all, it's become synonymous with being a place of peace and serenity for all who are weary, worn, and in need of a bridge to a new beginning. Welcome to the Village of Scereno.